Hey everyone, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. Today, as you can see, I have no makeup on right now. And that's because I'm going to do the makeup and writing tag, originally created by one of my favorite author tubers here on YouTube, and that is Alexa Dunn. I will link her channel down below, you should definitely check her out. Basically what this tag is you do your makeup while answering some questions about your writing style and things like that, and I just think that's just super fun. And I need to do my makeup anyway because I'm gonna film some other videos today, so why not? I don't really wear makeup every single day. I barely wear any, like when I go to work and stuff, but makeup is fun, so yeah, let's do this. I'm just gonna take my damn hair out of my face. Alright, so let's get right to it. First question is primer, and what's your brainstorming process / favorite brainstorming tip? First of all, for my primer I'm going to use Face Blur by Etude House. This is a Korean brand and I love this stuff. It's amazing. For this question I'm gonna go with after you have an idea and you've kind of decided on an idea. How do you then go about figuring out the story, the characters, you know? What I like to do is I usually have some kind of idea to start off with, like a concept, a theme, a character, something. I have to start from somewhere. So I basically just write that down and then do a word cloud brainstorming technique around it. So I put it in the middle, I put my theme or my character, whatever I want to start off with in the middle, and then I just start throwing random words, random concepts, characters, etc. That's what I did with my most recent book, the one I talked about, Sound of Crooked Hearts, and honestly I used most of the things that I came up with in that word cloud, not every single thing. But personally I think that works pretty well. Obviously the words and the things you come up with should be kind of connected, but in general I think that's a good brainstorming technique. And it works for me, it might not work for you obviously. This is just something that I've used in the past and it worked, so. Okay, so primer is done. Next question. And makeup product is foundation. Are you a gardener or architect? i.e. do you outline or not? As for foundation, I will use another product by Etude House. I should probably show it over here. And this is Precious Mineral by Etude House, and it's a cushion foundation. If you're not familiar with cushion foundations, they're like a huge thing in Korea, and they are actually really nice. So it's just like this. I'm not a beauty guru, so this, you know, that it's just like this, and then you have this little puff. So on the topic of gardener versus architect, this is George R. R. Martin's term. Other people use planning versus pantsing, or outlining versus pantsing. So if you're a pantser, then you know you're basically a gardener. You don't really know what you're doing until you've gotten to it. As for me, I am definitely a bit of both. I have been a complete gardener or pantser in the past, and it worked out fine in the end, but I just didn't enjoy the process as much. I felt like I didn't really know what I was doing most of the time, and that's not a nice feeling to have when you're writing a book. And so now I feel like I'm a little bit both, so I definitely outline. I start with an outline. I try to get as detailed as I can, but it's usually not that detailed. It's more like a skeleton. And then I pants along the way. I garden along the way. So I make up things as I go along. But I do need that kind of skeleton, that base to pants around. Definitely not a word, but you know what I mean. I think both are valid, so it really depends on you as a person, how you like to work and how you like to work as a writer. And of course, you can't always know that until you've tried both and see kind of where you fall. So again, I would just recommend trying it out for yourself and see how it works for you. There we go. I think I probably look extremely pale on camera, but that's because of the lighting. I am pale, but I'm not that pale. Next up, one of my favorite makeup items, and that is concealer. Love revision or hate it? What's your revision process like generally? So for concealer, I use this NYX HD Studio Photogenic Concealer. Yes, on the topic of revision, I like revision. My favorite part of the writing process is the editing, but I think revision does not equal editing, so at least not in my head. So what I think of revision is you've done your first draft, you've written your first draft, and then you kind of obviously first take a step back and then come back to it, read it, and write down what your thoughts are generally, you know, about the plot, about the characters, about their writing, etc., etc. So in the revision process, I just kind of like to take the story that I have in the first draft. I probably look a bit crazy right now. I'm gonna blend this out with a beauty blender. But I like to take first draft, or the story that I've built up in the first draft. And mind you, yes, I've used an outline, but that does not mean that the story can't take me in different directions than I originally thought about in the outline. So the story can change. But I like to take whatever the story ended up being in the first draft and look at it critically and look at, you know, what can I do better? Are the characters developed enough? Are there plot holes? Of course there usually are, you know, fix the plot holes, deepen the story, deepen the characters, etc. So that's kind of what I think of revision. And that's just sort of brainstorming, writing down detailed instructions on how to fix the plot holes, on what the characters' motivations are, stuff like that. So it's not actually writing. I'm not editing at this point. I'm not rewriting at this point. I'm just trying to fix the issues that I've created in that first draft and kind of take the story to that next level. So that's revision for me. And like I said, it's not my favorite process. I think actually my least favorite process in the whole thing is probably the writing. Like the first draft is the most difficult for me. Then revision is fine. I usually revise pretty quickly, but then editing takes the most time. And of course, you don't just do that once, you do it multiple times with multiple drafts, multiple versions of the same draft, and so that takes a while. But editing is definitely my favorite, and revising is also fun because you still get to take that pile of questionable material and mold it into a much better story. And so I just love that entire process, and that's why I kind of hate or dislike writing the first draft, because as I'm writing it I always feel like I don't know what I'm doing, or that it's not good enough, or that I'm just kind of just randomly, blindly going forward, even though I do have an outline, but that, you know what I mean. But then I can look at it more critically and I can, oh, okay, this is actually, you know, this is fixable, this can work. And then actually then do the work to make it better. Okay, so that is the base done. Oh, well, actually no, there's one more step, and that is powder. And the question for powder is endings. Do you write chronologically or start at the end? Do you know your ending when you start? Prefer happy endings or bittersweet? Okay, let me find my powder. And that is this Kat Von D Locket setting powder, translucent setting powder. It's just like the small, kind of, not sample, but the smaller version of the real thing, because I wanted to try it out, and it is pretty good. So, question, endings. Do you write chronologically or start at the end? I definitely write chronologically. I can't really think of how I would do it any other way. I don't understand writers who can write, who can jump around, or even worse, who can start at the end. And I know there's a very good reason for starting at the end. However, I just can't do that. I have to start at the beginning and I have to write chronologically. And as for if I know my endings when I start writing, not really. Like, I know, of course, if I've outlined and I have done a skeleton, I know in general how the story will end, but definitely not specifics, definitely not the sort of theme that I want to end up with, and the details and how the characters will end up, like, you know, how they will have changed. I also like endings to make sense, obviously, and because I don't write such detailed outlines, I can't really know how I want everything to conclude when I write that outline and when I start writing the first draft. So I like to have a general idea, of course, but no, I don't know all of the ending, all of the details of the ending. And do I prefer happy endings or bittersweet? I do like some kind of reader expectation to be fulfilled at the end, but I also do like to make it a little bittersweet. Like, I do like to tie up every end, but I don't like to tie it up in a pretty little bow, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't have to be tied up nicely, but it has to be somehow resolved. Some things will have happy endings, like some plot lines will have happy endings, some will have bittersweet endings, and so I like to have kind of a combination of both. Does that make sense? I feel like it makes sense in my head, but maybe I'm not explaining it very well. But yes, in general, a happy ending, but also mixed in with some bittersweet as well, because I like angst. Angst is fun. There has to be a little bit of that. Okay, so now we're done with the base, and now we move on to eyebrows. And the question for eyebrows is titles. Do you come up with them before you start? During? After? Is titling your work important to you or not? So let me find my eyebrows. My eyebrows are right here, but my eyebrow products, I usually tend to go with either one of these. So I have a eyebrow pencil. So it's one of these, and I have no idea what this is because it completely rubbed off. But it is pretty good. But more recently, I just like to use this kind of powder set, you know, one of these. I just think it works. So yes, titles. Oh, I have a strange relationship with titles. I have complained about titles before on this channel, and I will continue to complain about them because titles are not easy for me. They either come to me or I have to dig them out with a shovel. The title for my most recent book that I finished, The Sound of Crooked Hearts, when I was writing the first draft of The Sound of Crooked Hearts, I had actually named it Hammers and Hearts. That's because it's a title of a song by Daphne Loves Derby. It's this really random song I used to listen to a lot when I was like 14, 15. And I kind of felt like the emotion, the feeling of that song matched my book, and so that's what it was called. Then I just kind of felt like, you know, hammers doesn't really connect in any way, and it might sound weird to someone who has no idea. So I just decided to change it. Just did a little bit of brainstorming, different words that would fit the feel of the book, and then I ended up with The Sound of Crooked Hearts. And I love that title. I feel like it fits perfectly with the theme, with the feeling, with everything. I adored that title. So that was a great experience with titles. But the process of coming up with a title for Hunting Vienna was excruciating, and I'm still not 100% on that title, so I'm not a fan of titling because it's so unpredictable. Okay, eyebrows are done. I don't do that much to my eyebrows, I just fill them in a little bit. Next step is eyeshadow. Some people go monochromatic and some people blend. Do you love big or small casts? And what's your favorite character development hack? Okay, so I very rarely wear eyeshadow, but when I do, I have this lovely Too Faced chocolate bar palette that I love. If you're not aware, this palette smells like chocolate and it has all of these beautiful colors. Look at me trying to be a beauty guru. I'm really not. But yeah, I'm actually just gonna use my finger. I don't want to go too crazy on the eyeshadow because I'm not very good at eyeshadow because I don't use it very often. I'm pretty bad at eyeshadow. I love big casts. I maybe overcast my books, if that's a word. Love really big, tight-knit casts of characters, especially if they're friends before the story starts, but actually even better if they're not, but they become friends throughout the story. But I do love my cast of characters. I love creating these dynamic relationships between the characters and the banter and the angst and all of that. I don't know, I love a good squad. But it's not easy writing a big cast of characters because, especially if they're all in the same room during a specific scene, that's very hard to write actually. So ideally, you know, you kind of have to split them up a little bit so that they're not all in the same room at the same time, because that gets confusing. But you have too much dialogue by too many characters at the same time, trying to butt in and you know, talk as normal people talk in those kind of situations, but you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. So I love my cast of characters, my big cast of characters, but I do try to split them up a little bit in some scenes and not have all of them all at once every single time, because that gets messy. So I'm gonna try, let's see, maybe some hazelnut, the color, like in the corner of my eye. And then, what's your favorite character development hack? Don't really have like a hack, but since I do like my big cast of characters, I like writing my characters to play off of each other, and not just in terms of, you know, dialogue and stuff, but also in terms of development. I like to develop them based on their friendships as well, and have their friendships grow or die, depending on the case, during the story. And I also think that does wonders to character development as well. Do you see that? Yeah. I'm gonna have to fix that. See, this is why I don't do eyeshadow, because I'm not really good at it. But writing characters, and especially writing friendships, and like I said, big cast of characters, is probably my favorite part of the writing process. That and dialogue, especially dialogue of these characters and of these dynamics. That's definitely my favorite part. And you know, it does take me a few drafts to really get inside the headspace of the characters and really get their motivations right, and all of that. But in terms of friendships, I think I'm relatively okay at writing them. So that's fine, but now I have to fix this thing, whatever this situation is, better. Okay, so moving on to eyeliner. Definitely my favorite part of the makeup process, and the one thing I do, not every day, but almost every day, is eyeliner. So basically when I go to work and stuff, I only wear like maybe some concealer and some eyeliner, and that's it. So eyeliner. What is the hardest thing for you to write? So for eyeliner, I have two things, because this is really good, but it's running out, so it's a little bit dry. And so this is L'Oreal Paris Perfect Slim black eyeliner. And then this is Eye Artist by Astor. This is not that great, but because this is running out, I have to use both. So what is the hardest thing to write? In terms of actual writing, I think descriptions will be the death of me. I am really bad at writing good descriptions, and so that's kind of one of the things that in the first drafts, I don't even try. If I have to describe a room or a scene, I just do it in very basic words, and then draft after draft after draft, I try to improve that description to make it come alive. Otherwise, in terms of conceptual things and stuff, I think like character motivations sometimes get the better of me. I struggle sometimes to write the right character motivation, if that makes sense, because sometimes it makes sense in my head, but it's not necessarily compelling, like a reader's point of view, to make the character come alive and to make the character relatable or sympathetic, you know, for the reader. And so sometimes I have to completely rewrite my character motivations, and with that then change plot and actions and stuff, because then obviously some stuff will not make sense. The problem with this eyeliner is that the lines don't come out very neat, and so please don't judge my eyeliner game right now, because it's not great. Moving on to mascara. Do you write long or short? What's your typical first draft word count? Okay, so for mascara, I have this Benefit Roller Lash mascara. Very good, I recommend it. It's mascara, does things to your eyelashes. I'm not an expert. First drafts, well, I've done both at this point. My first draft of Hunting Vienna was 120,000 words for a YA contemporary novel that ended up being 72,000 words, so you know, that was like way overwriting. But that's also because I didn't have an outline, so I had no idea what I was writing most of the time, and so it went off in a lot of tangents. But The Sound of Crooked Hearts, the first draft of it, actually ended up being around the right word count. It ended up being 71,000 words, but I do want to bump that up a little bit, and so it ended up shorter, but honestly not that much shorter. So I definitely kind of now, if I have an outline, I would like to try to stick to around the right word count, but I'd honestly prefer it to be shorter and then add things instead of really, really long, and then I just have to delete a lot and rewrite. Okay, next step is contour, something that I almost never do, but we'll try. Tell us about the dark parts of your book. Who is your villain or antagonist? What dark, creepy, tough things do your characters face? Okay, let me find a contour thing. So I don't have a contour even, apparently. I do have bronzer. So we'll just replace it with bronzer. I have two. I have a small little Too Faced Snow Bunny Luminous Bronzer, and then I have a L'Oreal Paris Glam Bronze. So I think I'm just gonna use this. I didn't really have a villain or antagonist in Hunting Vienna, although that's a bit debatable because the secondary character, or the love interest, does some bad things that can be considered, you know, the works of a villain. So she can, in some cases, be considered the villain. I didn't write her to be a villain. She is a love interest and one of the main characters, and so that's a nice line there, isn't it? I will blend that out, don't worry. But I do have an antagonist in Sound of Crooked Hearts, an antagonist that I quite love because of her reasoning. So it is also a girl antagonist. All of the characters in my other book are mostly girls. Like, most of them are girls, so it's not just that I write girl villains, but like, it just so happens that they're girls. But anyway, I love the antagonist in The Sound of Crooked Hearts because of the reasons for the things that she does, the reason behind it that you don't find out until right at the very end, as you should. And that was one of the things that I figured out in revision, because in the first draft I just wrote her as, you know, a typical kind of antagonist doing things just for the sake of doing things, which obviously you should never ever do. But in the first draft, it doesn't really matter so much. Then I had to really think about it and really figure out, okay, why is she being so mean? But I mean, the two books that I'm talking about are YA contemporaries, and so the dark things are not like super, super dark, you know. No one dies, don't worry about it, spoilers, but it's just not that kind of book, right? So the dark things are more like mental health things, just, you know, manipulation and just being mean to each other. Next, moving on to blush. That I can do. Who are you most scared to share your work with? Oh, that's an interesting question. Okay, let me just find blush. So right now I tend to go between this Too Faced Love Flush, kind of more pink color, and then I also have this Benefit Sugar Bomb that is kind of, it's a bit more peachy. So I kind of like using this one more in the summer. Not that I have a tan, but I just think it looks nicer in the summer, and this looks nicer in the winter time. So I'll use this for now. So who am I most scared to share my work with? Honestly, as any writer, I think I am scared of like anyone reading my work. You know, it's one of those things where I'm so proud of my work, but just at the idea of someone else reading my words and maybe not liking them, I get all panicky. But you do get over that quite quickly, especially if you have beta readers and critique partners, that, you know, initially that first time you send something new to someone to read, that's a little bit excruciating. But you know, as soon as you get some feedback and you realize, oh, it's not actually all shit, and they actually did like it at least a little bit, it starts to go away. No book is gonna be loved by everyone, but you know, obviously you do hope that someone will enjoy it, and so there's always that thought in the back of your head that's like, this is shit, and they'll find out that I'm shit and everything is awful. What am I doing? But yeah, it does go away pretty quickly once you actually start getting people to read your book. But yeah, I mean, obviously I've only had other writers and beta readers read my books. I have not had the general public read my book, and so that's still scary. And obviously I want to publish my stuff one day, and you know, just the thought of a lot of people getting to read my book, that is terrifying, not gonna lie. But that's the goal, isn't it? So we'll be fine. Okay, so I think I'm done with blush. Next part is, second to last part, almost there guys. Highlighter, favorite type of scene to write. I like scenes that have a lot of plot and a lot of banter between the characters. So especially if you can combine those two things, because a lot of dialogue, like a chapter full of dialogue or a chapter full of action scenes separately, those are not very good. But if you find a way to combine it, so I'm not necessarily thinking about action scenes, but just something where a good chapter where the plot moves along, and obviously that should be every chapter, but where the plot moves along a little faster, so there's lots of things happening, and also the characters get to scream at each other or just make jokes at each other, just be obnoxious to each other, but in a funny way. Those are probably my favorite kinds of scenes to write. Because again, I love character interactions, and especially if you can then combine it with some kind of, you know, interesting action. I think that's super, super fun. Okay, and now the very last part is lipstick. Writing kissing scenes, love or hate, and how do you tackle them? Oof, kissing scenes, oh man. I have so many lipsticks and I barely use them, so maybe let's try this one. So this is Syrup by MAC, and it's a very pretty color. So kissing scenes. I love reading really good kissing scenes, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm very scared of actually writing them. I usually end up rewriting them because it wasn't that great the first time around. I just think it really depends on the plot of your book, because you can have like a really quiet kissing scene which might fit the plot of your book really well, but at the same time you can have like a really action-packed, you know, break in the middle, something explodes while your two characters are finally having that moment, and then something breaks them apart. Those are really fun to read, but of course it has to fit with your story, and it doesn't always fit, because I don't like really long kissing scenes. I just like the build-up towards it is my favorite part, and then when it actually comes down to it, I just want it to be done really quickly, either by not describing it much or by having them break apart, or, you know, something happening so that you don't end up reading 3 pages of 2 characters kissing, because that's not really the point. I'm not writing romance, so, you know, it's just one of those things that has to happen. But in general, kissing scenes, you should prefer writing from an emotional point of view, so like describing what's going on through the main character's head, and not what he's doing with his body or what the other character is doing with their body, if that makes sense, because that tends to be a bit cliche, and we as readers, we kind of want to know just what's going on in their head, you know, and how they feel about it, more than, because we know how kissing works, right? Like physically we know how it works. It's not necessarily that exciting to describe, at least, because people know how that works, but what's going on inside can be very different from anyone else, as readers, as whoever, so that's interesting to write, but it can be a little difficult as well. So yeah, kissing scenes definitely not my favorite thing to write, but if the plot requires it, then I'll find a way to do it well. But it does take me a few drafts to get it right. So those were all the questions, and this is my finished face. As far as makeup looks go, this is quite maybe not a natural look, but it's quite a subtle look. Nothing too crazy, but that's just the kind of makeup I like. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will link all of the products that I've used down below in case you're interested. But I hope you enjoyed watching me ramble about writing and also failing at doing my own makeup. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye!